Mon
Hmm. There they are. All right. Welcome to everybody. Hmm. Right. Mhm. Well, I bring you greetings from Barcelona, where I am at the moment. Getting ready to do a session tomorrow for the Institute of Coaching European gathering. Um, so welcome. All right. So I just want to, I'm going to share some things about tonight and what we're going to do because it's going to be a little bit different. But I just wanted to check in and see what you all are bringing to the session today. Anything that's on your mind or anything you're secretly hoping we'll talk about or. Hmm, okay. All right. If things come up, you're always welcome to put being present and curious. Nothing to cover, just curiosity. Excellent. All right. Well, a lot has happened in my life since I last saw you. And so it really caused me to reflect on how I wanted to do the session tonight. And a couple of you are in our Guiding Lights retreat at the moment. So I'm going to share part of that story I shared with you last week as sort of a prelude for today. Um, and so one of the themes all along for the last while with these BCEs is this whole notion of the full circle, the breathing in and breathing out as a way to track our experience and notice new things. And one of the aspects of that's been particularly important for me in these last few months, and it's actually been quite useful in terms of a lot of things I'm moving through in my own life. And I wanted to share that sort of idea with you. And I've even come up with the possibility of a name for this. And so this will be the first time I declare that in public. So I'm going to try it out and see what you think. Um, and a couple of sources for this, sort of to give ourselves some grounding for the practice we're going to do. So one is, it's pejoratively called spiritual bypassing, but in a more inclusive sense, it's when we engage in a lot of development for ourselves, but we don't actually develop. It looks like we've developed. We talk about developing language. We talk about spiritual things, but we're actually no more mature than we were before. And 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 so as part of that, I was trying to sort of get some language around thinking about meditation in a new way. Not that thousands of years of history haven't figured out things about meditation, but I thought about what could we learn in a new way about meditation. So that's half of the equation. The other half is that I had a moment. I moved house 10 days ago, right before my trip to Finland. And there was a moment, I think on the second or third night, where it was all just too much. It was just too much. I thought I have nothing left. I have it. It just was. I could feel there was so much energy, so much change, so much everything all at once. And I thought, okay, well, it's an interesting experience to be having. And so I thought, what? I know a lot about this stuff. What do I know that could be helpful to me right now? And so I invented in the moment a new breathing practice. And uh, we're going to do part of that tonight. And the gist of this has to do with something that many people will recognize from things we've taught in the past, which is that one of the gifts of this work for me is to help us to be able to learn faster and more deeply from our lived experience. And rather than feeling like I've got to figure, I've got to do this all myself, I've got to figure everything out, I've got to, it's just like the what isness of life shows up. Here it is, right here. And and if you live long enough, you have some of those moments visit us often. Like, oh, there you are again. I could have sworn I already dealt with this, but here you are again. So apparently I did not. And I just thought there's got to be a better way to think about this. And so I started to do this breathing where I imagined this sort of circle that was just like, again, like a foot or so in front of me, where sort of the yin yang symbol, sort of that sort of curved belly coming out of just breathing into this experience of it's all too much. And then what that allowed me to do was to allow it's too much to be out there right in front of me. And so I could externalize it to see it and notice it in a way I couldn't when it was like all in me. And then I could actually breathe with that to a point where um, I began to sort of inquire into it. I didn't try to change it. I didn't try to make it go away. I just let it be. The too muchness was just right there. And this was probably 11 o'clock at night, and I was really dreading not being able to sleep. And I had a big day the next day. So I just did this breathing and had this conversation. I just sort of befriended that it's too much. I said, I'm not going to figure this out. It's not going away, but also I can breathe with it. And I noticed my body started to change and my breathing changed. And I lay down and within 10 minutes was sound asleep. I thought, excellent. We like this. Um, and so I created a little graphic, which I'll show you in a minute, and that I'd like to guide us through. It's one of the meta iterations of our primary practice. But it really, again, the focus, and I'm experimenting with calling this developmental meditation. If you had come to my retreats over the years before the pandemic, this is what we did, but we didn't call it that. And the primary thing I'd like us to focus on is, so much of coaching, as it's often taught, is us equipping ourselves to help people change things. And my work has been, in some ways, the opposite. I might have people be present to things because you can't change what you're not present to and don't accept and don't own. Um, and so the practice we're going to do is really to help us to. I'm going to ask you in a few minutes to think of something in your life that you're musing about, thinking about, wondering about, worried about, anxious about, whatever, something that's up for you. And then I'm going to guide you to a specific piece of that that's going to be the source for our practice. And what we're going to do is I know some people like to feel prepared. So this is you being prepared. We're going to, I'm looking at you, MJ. Yes, no. Um, that we're going to imagine that we're going to descend into the clarity of this one piece of your dilemma, just one piece. And we're going to imagine that that one piece is going to be your teacher for the practice. And then we're going to rise out of that through the breathing in to see what it was trying to tell you. And so I've been experimenting. So, as a profoundly introverted person, I just got back from 4 days sitting by a large lake in Finland and I was the most happiest place I've been in a long time to get on and come back to an airport, which was like the worst nightmare ever. But I used this practice to help myself breathe through 3 hours waiting at the airport. And so I thought, there could be something to this. And my hope for you for the activity is that you glean things from the practice that will help you sit with things that are in your life. and to allow you to understand what is it doing here. Not that we attracted it or we created it, or it's just here, whether we wanted it or not. It's just here. And I'm finding that this has been a really helpful practice to be present in the current political environment, in the current global environment, and even in our own lives and practices, to help us return to grounding and self-regulation so we make better choices. So I'm going to stop there for a minute and I'm going to put up this slide just as an anchor for those who like visuals, and then I'm going to guide you through the practice. But I want to know if anything has come up for you so far. Anything that's on your mind or your heart. Some of you, I think, are new. Anything that you'd like to ask or share before we begin?
Sorry, I am new. Um,
Welcome, Nikki.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just when you said here you are again, I just like the spirit of it as well as obviously
Mm.
what it's saying. It's kind of not jovial, but it's accepting, isn't it? Here you are
Yeah,
again. You know,
yeah,
seems like without judgment. So I just like that. Thank you.
yes. Although I do wonder sometimes if our patterns gather after the day and mock us for the fact that they keep. Oh, let's see. Let's give her this one again. Let's see how she reacts this time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yes, but and again, part of it is that I mean, in all seriousness, there is some humor in this. I find it really fascinating. I think humans are we're strange creatures. Um, yeah. Anybody else want to share anything before we go?
Well, I'm new here.
Yes, and what is your name?
Is Abdi Rafi.
Okay, welcome.
I just wonder how could you let your problem be your teacher?
Um, so
Mm,
most of us respond to things from some form of habit. And certain kinds of things make us upset or excited, or we have patterns about how we engage with people or new things or things we don't like. And so when things emerge that we didn't ask for, maybe don't like, wish were different, we will respond with some form of habit. And my observation is that whatever constellated that in the first place doesn't go away just because we've ignored it or responded to it with habit. And that a lot of how we're experiencing things are less about the thing itself and more about the story we're telling ourselves. So, in the moment when I had this feeling like it's all too much, I was sitting in a lovely apartment in the middle of Amsterdam, had all my belongings around me, many good things were happening in my life. So in reality, it wasn't all too much. There was many wonderful things happening, but even that felt like too much. But rather than try to judge that or judge myself, or I just said, so what is this asking of me? What it's here. The sensation is real. It's in part informed by my mindset, but it's any of us in that situation may have felt the same thing. So I just said, well, this is here. So what can I learn from this? And so I had some pretty amazing epiphanies once I was able to self-regulate. And so we're always in dialogue with our life. The rude person who cuts us off in traffic, the thing that didn't turn out quite the way we'd hoped, the surprise gift we receive. And so rather than, and so I want to look at a lot of our ways of thinking about developing ourselves in more relational terms. And part of that is inquiring, what might this be here for? And what can I learn from this? And it's not it's not like the old thing that many of us were raised. it's teaching us a lesson or there's some kind of cosmic plan. It's really just, it's here right now. And how do I want to be in dialogue with this thing that's here right now?
Yes, because when you get a problem, your the reaction by default is to how to get rid
Yes.
of it. So it's really difficult to. I find it difficult to stay with the problem and to listen to him.
Yeah. So the first step is there are no problems. There's just things we don't like or wish were different or things we're trying to figure out. And and so because if we name it as a problem, then we are immediately in opposition to it and we're going into problem solving mode. And we may solve the problem and miss the lesson. So the problem comes back because we didn't pay attention the first time. And again, I also I don't subscribe to the thinking that everything happens for a reason. No, stuff just happens. And there's no reason. Sometimes there is, but often not. Um, the person who maybe behaved rudely as a driver didn't wake up that morning and said, "Ah, Terry's having too good of a day. I'm going to follow her and be really rude on the road," right? No, they have no idea who we are. They're just being themselves. They're doing something that we've labeled as something that we don't like, but they're just being themselves. They're not there for a reason. Um, and anyways, um, anything else for right now? I don't want to explain too much, otherwise. Yes, Ellen.
I just want to say that this resonates so much for me.
Mm,
Shortly before I started learning from you, I was diagnosed with a chronic illness,
mm,
a very serious one. And this past year has been a journey of trying to just be with it because I can't make it go away. And and I have learned so much from my illness. I'm not
mm,
glad that I'm sick, but I'm
no,
glad that I had the chance to learn.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Life is funny. On the on the I was watching a special the other day of with Charles Schultz, who was famous for the creator the Peanuts strip. And here's a man that probably has influenced the world through comics more than anybody in human history. And at the very end, the last thing he said, he was dying of cancer, was he was moved to tears. He was just so surprised that people liked it so much. And I thought, wow. And yeah, so one of the phrases we often use is there's a fierce humility in thinking this way. Yeah. All right. Are we good to go? All right. So I'm just going to show you because again, some of you won't have seen this. Um, so I just put I took out a lot of the stuff just to keep this simple. So we're going to start, as we often do, with number one. It's a good place to begin. And obviously, we're going to be breathing in and out just in rhythm. So we're not only doing this once, but just to kind of show we're just beginning the meditation by breathing out as a way to release ourselves into a process. And you'll have to breathe in shortly thereafter, but we're going to focus every time that goes around on your out breath for a while as I guide you through the meditation. And then when we get to number two, and hopefully some new awareness comes to you, we'll then start to focus more on our in breath to come back to see what this is awakening. And in the meditation, I'd like you to imagine that you're going to be dropping from up at the top down to number two. And then when we kind of get to that point, then we'll kind of, like I said, build our way back up. And then as we go through, I'll explain why those two words in yellow are there. All right. So all you have to do for right now is get yourself comfortable and you might find that closing your eyes helps you to stay more focused. And as you relax into your chair, just feel your body at every point it makes contact so that all of you is here. And as you feel yourself quiet, just bring into your mind's eye something that's on your mind or your heart today. And just sit with it through a few breaths. Perhaps you can imagine it as a movie that's playing in front of you, or a song that's playing inside you. And as you hold this in yourself, I'd like you just to notice any sensations or emotions that come up in you. I want you to notice any objects or people or colors, anything that sort of allows you to see what you're focused on in 3 dimensions. Maybe it was an episode or an encounter or a memory. Imagine it's fully present to you right now. And so, as we begin the next part of our meditation, I'd like you just to focus on your out breath. And as you exhale, I'd like you to sort of drop deeper into your story. So, your mind shaped the first version of your story. And now I'd like your breath and your body to drop deeper into that story. It might be through your body, it might be through emotion, it might be through words. But what is happening in this story, really? As you breathe out, relax, see what else wants to become visible. And as you descend further into the story, I'd like you to pick one thing out of your whole story to bring further into the meditation. It could be a look on somebody's face. It could be an object. It could be some words that were said. But just one thing. In my own example of It's All Too Much, I noticed a clenching in my diaphragm. What one thing wants to make itself known to you? If you have your one thing, just hold it in your out breath. To allow yourself to be more present to it. If you haven't yet noticed your one thing, just keep breathing out. So wherever you have arrived, with one thing or not, ask yourself, what is it inviting me to become aware of? And because this is a new insight, perhaps for you, it may not be totally clear yet. So now we're going to shift and focus on our in-breath as we come back to the surface. And imagine that in-breath now is taking in this one thing, seeing what it wants to say to us or help us see. And as we do so, we might notice that it becomes clearer and stronger because we're bringing it more breath. And as you breathe in, notice if your body is changing or wants to be changing. Our bodies tend to reflect our stories. So perhaps your story is changing. And if so, what is your body wanting to do? For many of you, you may start feeling lighter. And the question here now that you're more aware of what this one thing in your story, what is it awakening in you? As you deepen your meditation on this object, uh, um, um, how is it asking you to develop? Maybe it's pointing to a larger pattern that you've been here before. And this is object or whatever it was for you is helping you to see it in a new way. What's being awakened in you now? Hmm. And when you're ready, I would like to invite you to come back to the room. And if you'd like to take any notes or draw any pictures, take a couple minutes to do that while Karen is setting up some breakout rooms. And I'd like to then invite you just to share as you feel called what's happening, what happens is happening and happened for you in the process that feels important to you. Okay? Mm. Mm. All right. So we all set, Karen? Not yet. Okay. Just let me know when you're ready.
Just needed, some folks have to leave, so let me just make some last minute adjustments here.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me know. Mm.
Mm.
Oh,
All right.
everybody ready? And how many minutes did you want?
I would like 30 minutes.
I will give you 30 minutes. You need anything, you know where David and I are.
Hmm. Go. There we go. Hmm.
Hi, David.
Hey, hello. Are I'm assuming you're not driving, Fiona.
I pulled over to the side of the road.
Okay, good. Excellent. We had one of our students like, a couple weeks ago actually was trying to be on the call with her phone on the dashboard while she was driving, and I told her to hang up. She said, "We love you, but please be safe."
Yeah.
Hmm. All right. So I'm just really curious, kind of what emerged for you in this experiment with developmental meditation.
If it's better for the chat, that's fine too, whatever mode.
Um,
I cannot find where I can raise my hand.
okay.
It's okay, you just did. Go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, it was very much the conversation afterwards and sharing what we've experienced, because I do not tend to meditate. I do what I call informal mindfulness, but I don't usually meditate. So I was grabbing on to things. So I'm never sure I'm doing it right. But
Mhm.
somehow what also by sharing the experience and and having the conversation and reflecting together on what we've experienced, there is a sentence that actually comes from Lisa, but that is uh, what it all led to, and that is ready to receive and expanding rather
Mm.
than contracting, expanding and being ready to receive.
Okay. Thank you. Mm.
Admit, I got that from David when I took the class. Sorry. Sorry. Thank you.
Well, that's where it went. I was missing that. I was wondering what happened to it. Mila.
There you
I
go.
want to expand upon what Imola said. In our conversation, we got into a really interesting tangent about we were calling it my buffer is full. That sense of how much capacity your awareness has at any given point, and particularly when it's overwhelmed with input.
Mm.
So it compels you to select priorities, to just triage the moment. But we were talking a little bit about like when you go into a store and it's got a lot of display pieces and you can only see a piece of it, and you're in the store for a little while and all of a sudden you look up and there's things hanging from the ceiling, and you'd been there 10 minutes and you didn't realize that there was anything above
Mm.
your eye line or below your eye line. But we got talking about that experience of a limited awareness capacity, and then how all of a sudden it'll pop in and you'll become aware of the rest of it.
Mm. Yeah, and for me, the part of why I'm just really intrigued with this, what we've been doing in these full circle practices, um, and why I wanted to focus on this particular part of it tonight is just helping us being aware of patterns. And so, one of the things that I discovered in that breathing activity that night was, I thought, this is probably how I felt for the first 7 years of my life. Without going into a lot of details. And I thought, maybe it's time to let that go. Maybe it's time to not have to demonstrate yet again. Look at how much David can manage with so much that's going on. And I had these flashbacks to when I was a small child, and how my system had calibrated around, it's all too much. And so the value for me of these dialogical encounters with these objects or elements from our experiences is it helps us kind of as a portal to sort of the origins of some of these pieces. So that you can resolve something not just in the circumstance you're in right now, but the pattern that it reflects in one way or another. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, MJ.
I was in the same group with Mila, and what I took into the group was like I have just finished a certification in doing guided autobiography workshops.
Okay.
And everybody was talking about, and our group was talking about what specialized audience they wanted to work with and venues and things. And I mean, I had some solid ideas, but I wasn't really clear. And I went into that, I took this into this activity.
Uh-huh.
First of all, kind of here it is again, was the question of what are you going to do with this? Okay, now how are you going to integrate this new thing into your life? This new thing that you've finished or taken on. And the one thing that came up for me was my friend Deborah had told me that her mother-in-law wanted to start a memoir. And she was excited for me to take this training. So I thought, that's where I start. That's my first step. I build a group around Deborah and her mother-in-law, and that's enough. And I thought of your phrase, hold it lightly. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take this step, which will be perfectly fine.
Great. Right.
I'm very grateful, David, that you've highlighted the fact of paying attention to the patterns, because it is a pattern, indeed, and it is a pattern, and I feel like as if this call and me being in this call is an invitation to really pay attention to it as an overall I don't know, challenge, whatever it might be, an invitation, overall invitation to, and something that I wanted to say, something that we noted in our group, that we noticed that you said 2 or 3 times that you don't believe that things happen for a reason. They just happen. And the fact that you repeated that more than once.
Okay.
And I'm curious, and I don't want to take anything off topic, but I'm curious why you say that, why you believe, and if you are convinced that that's the case.
That's a heftier theological conversation, but um, mostly I equate it with the English expression of whistling in the dark. Things happen, we want them to make some kind of sense and meaning, so we believe that there was a reason. And I think it makes us feel better because that it's not just random. But having spent the early part of my career as a grief counselor, you hear about some pretty horrible things, and I would have to stretch myself enormously to imagine what would be the reason for this. It doesn't mean you cannot find reason or you can use something as a catalyst, but um, yeah, I just find it, most humans really struggle to be in the presence of grief. And most of what people say to grieving people is not very helpful at all, but they don't know what else to say. So um, rather than worth, I, I'm trying to just help people be present to what is. And they may find a reason in time. They may have an explanation for it, which could even be true. But I'm just finding more and more if we can just allow ourselves to be with it, we discover more about it. Um, and it was a cliched phrase I heard one too many times, and I just sort of got tired of it. Um, so there. Fiona,
Can you hear me?
yes, I can
Yeah,
now.
okay, good. Okay. You just tapped into a topic that is, I'm going to say, a current passion topic.
Mm,
And I wished I'd known you when you were doing your grief counseling, if you will.
yeah.
Last year I wrote an article on ambiguous grief, which I'm dealing with a lot
Hmm.
in the last, I'm going to say, 6 to 8 months. Specifically, one of the elements that I'm dealing with right now is still the caretaking, as you may know or
Yeah.
remember, of my father. And, my father is in a home. He has dementia. I'm his essential caregiver. When people see me, they go, "Oh, how's your dad?" The first reaction that comes up is, "He's in a home and he has dementia. How do you think he's
Mm,
doing?"
mm,
And people are well intentioned, but the
mhm.
question is wrong.
Yeah.
They don't see the progression of grief and the impact of grief for the caregiver. So it's very little about how are you, Fiona, or how are you, insert name, whoever is taking care of a loved one. And I bring that up because your work is very, very powerful in that regard.
Mm,
I was telling my group that I had to, I learned your work, I learned your methodology and framework to help clients of mine, right? Now I'm walking a different path. Now I'm walking my
mm,
own talk. And when dealing with ambiguous grief, rather than having the narrative of nobody sees me, nobody's asking about how I am, why
yeah.
isn't anybody asking about me? And I'm feeling drained and I'm feeling tired and I'm feeling exhausted and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I have had to turn that table around, look in the mirror and go, okay, how do I change my own narrative?
Mm,
How do I show up in a healthier, stronger way? How do I want to be at the end of this today? And so for me right now, it is a daily reminder of what David's work is all about and the
mm.
power of your work. So I wanted to say just a heartfelt thank you for the reminder
Oh,
and you keeping having these calls because this is really
mm.
important.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Yeah. Part of what I take from that, Fiona, well, many things, but grief's not one thing. And sometimes we need to feel it, and sometimes we need to let it just be. So grief is in our midst. And yeah, Yeah. And I think it's just part of what I'm sort of discovering for myself and for all of us in these recent BCEs is a much deeper attunement to what's present, and then choices to your point, choices of how do I want to be with that? Yeah, it would be easy and in some ways justified to move into a woe is me place. Why don't they see? Why? But that's their limitation. They can't see you. They can't name that yet. Um, yeah,
You do, as I often say, you won't get it until you get it.
yeah,
And maybe their time will come when
yeah,
others get it of the
yeah.
power of ambiguous grief. Yeah.
Yeah, and so part of my too muchness is dealing with someone for whom it's I realize to continue to be in conversation was bringing her suffering. I don't want her to suffer, and she can't hear me. So, um, so part of it is just I think then we hold more lightly these big emotions and these big things, and then we can sort of be more fluid about how we want to relate to them. Yeah. So,
Thank you.
Austin, thank you. I'm going to presume some patience. Thank you. And ask you what's on your mind now.
I'm curious, David, how do you think that all the work it is that we're doing right now relates to the idea of self-esteem? And the reason why I bring that up is because past experience has taught me in my life that even if our lives are objectionably almost perfect, materially, we have everything that we need, we can still make our life into a living hell purely from the stories that we create
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
everything that is going on in our life.
Yeah.
And Nathaniel Branden, in his book, The Six Pillars of Self-Esteem, suggests that an individual of high self-esteem, one of the fundamental pillars of high self-esteem is believing that we are capable of dealing with any problem that arises within our life, and also that an individual of high self-esteem brings a very high degree of consciousness to all areas of his life. Because there are many things that, for example, I'm afraid of, and I have grief about, and one may argue that I don't bring a high degree of consciousness into these areas of my life because I'm running away from them. So how do you think self-esteem relates to all of this and these
Great
ideas
question.
that you bring up?
So what comes up in me when I listen to you is there's things I agree with, but also I can disagree and agree at the same time.
Okay.
So I would argue that self-esteem in its purest and best and highest sense is not connected to external conditions at all. And so if I just go back to my own personal story of that moment a couple of nights ago, well, last week before I left on my trip to Finland, uh, one of the insights I had when I was doing my breathing practice was, you're right, this is too much. Your perception is accurate. And so why do you think that you should be mastering and managing all of this? Oh, because I'm really good at that. That my whole life. And then I laughed at myself. And then laughter was what broke the veneer of the whole thing. And then I said, yes, your perception, your emotional acuity is high, right? No wonder you're feeling this way. And so I didn't need for that to change for me to still feel good about myself. I just needed to relieve myself of the fantasy that this shouldn't be bothering me. And so I look at, and then, and in sort of in a funny way, part of having self-esteem is recognizing in that moment my esteem sucks and I don't have self-esteem. But I have a core sense of myself to recognize that's just how I am. And that too will be a fleeting sensation and in time. And I think some of these that again, it's not that I disagree necessarily what he was writing. It's just more, I think we set ourselves up for failure when we put all these conditions about how we think we're supposed to be. Um, so part of what allowed me to go to sleep was I said, there's many things that are happening that are going well. Tomorrow's a new day. I'll see how I am then. We'll do some more. And yeah, and so I think for me, it's this coming to accept how we are and knowing that, so you see like the huge rise in suicidal ideation, particularly among young
Mm.
people.
Mm.
So they lack the esteem that will carry them through. They lack the perspective. They lack the support. They're inundated with too many things which are making their existence difficult. Um, and so I feel like part of my curiosity, which has driven this work the whole time, is I believe we need to find other ways of framing some of these things than we have in the past. I don't think it's helping us. Like if I had my druthers, we'd have at least one day a week where no one was allowed to use a telephone. You couldn't bring your mobile phone anywhere. I make a practice now when I'm at home, I just turn my phone upside down. It's a tiny thing, doesn't mean much, but for me, it's just a reminder, this is not my life. This has no bearing on how I feel or what I do unless I choose to let it do so. And I got rid of pretty much everything on my phone that has any level of distraction attached to it. So it's more than you probably wanted to hear, but there I am. Yeah. So, um, Terry, I'm curious about how you are in your journey. That's my daily, is my monthly check-in.
I love it. I also really appreciate that you brought yourself to today. You know,
Mm,
I think I've been listening and in our breakout session, it's like resonating and
mm,
that you're willing to be vulnerable enough with all of us to do that.
mm.
It makes such a huge difference. So,
Oh,
just wanted to appreciate that.
thank you.
And also just bringing my own dilemmas to the conversation that I was
Mm,
fortunate to have. And it's I did it was kind of nice to when we were in the meditation, the experimental meditation, to when you asked us to pick something, like I was up here trying
yeah,
to decipher which one of these should I pick,
yeah.
which dilemma. And then you said, oh, the body. I was like, oh, you mean that like tightness around my heart and chest? So when I just let that be the thing, it
Yeah,
was really great,
yeah,
then, to talk to just that piece of me and let that piece, be the thing that I could speak
right.
to. So I loved that part of the
Good.
experience. And so maybe that was part of the experiment with
Mm,
me, but and would relate to what some other folks have said, which is meditation kind of comes and goes. I don't feel like that competent at it, but just spending time like focusing on the in and the out and the up and the down, the awakening and the awareness, that was helpful.
yeah. And really, I'm not very good at meditation either, even though I've done lots of it.
Yeah.
For me, the value of all of these sessions we've had are inviting us to make key moments in our day meditative in nature.
Yeah.
And particularly um, the other day, but there's a small perturbance in my day, and I could just use that to like, oh, I could go down that path. No, I'm not, and went over here instead.
Yeah.
And so just living in these sort of moment by moment encounters and using what we do know and can do around meditation. I'm using that word pretty loosely, but still. I
Hmm.
just find it allows us to move through our day, going back to one of the things you said, Austin, with more consciousness
Yeah.
of how we are. And what I'm noticing that I don't, oftentimes like somebody would do a small thing and you get really perturbed or bothered. It wasn't that one thing. It was like an accumulation of things we never dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
never spoke up, we never acted on, we never let go of whatever. And then it just takes one little thing and so
Right.
I'm just trying to get rid of those moments in our
Yeah.
lives so we can process tiny things as they happen and then be done with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and less attachment,
Yes.
right? That's the other thing that's coming up for me. And you're answering one of the things we were talking about, which is how do we take this insight and integrate that in? And what you're saying is just do it in simple ways. Like, don't make that
Yeah.
another project for
No,
ourselves.
please. No, then I will feel I have failed. So if you do that,
Right.
yeah, we don't need more projects. We just need momentary moments of consciousness when we
Yeah.
have small victories where we let go of things and
Yeah.
don't add to the suffering in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Lenny, I know you joined us at the very end. Was there anything you'd like to add, or anybody else that hasn't spoken yet that would like to share more? And or maybe we're done. All right. Well, thank you for your time and for all your wonderful comments. And I look forward to seeing you next month. And thanks again, Karen, as always, for your fabulous hosting. Yeah.
Thank you, David.
All right. Be
Bye-bye.
well.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.